Announced last month that would take legal action against 3 pharmacy benefit managers, accusing them of artificially inflating the price of insulin. Joining us live now to talk about what this legal action means and how it could affect you is Antonio, the president of 3 Axis Advisors. Antonio, thank you so much for joining us this morning to talk with us today. We really appreciate your time. To start, can you just explain why the FTC chose to take this action now?
So, a great question. The Federal Trade Commission has been investigating the entire prescription drug supply chain for quite some time. When we typically think about problems within the prescription drug channel, we think about drug companies first and foremost. What we learned back in 2016 first was that there was a big controversy around the underlying prices of EpiPens. They've been going up significantly over time, and what they found was that underneath the list prices of those drugs were really big rebates and discounts that were not flowing their way back to the end patient. Insulin ultimately became a huge lightning rod back in 2018, prompting a ton of investigations within Congress and the Federal Trade Commission to start examining if the list prices are so detached from the real underlying cost of the product. The question is, where is the money going? And so the FTC aims to figure that out. And after years of investigation, they found that a tremendous amount of the value of insulin is being driven not necessarily just by drug companies, but by other intermediaries within the prescription drug supply chain, notably here, pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs.
So how do those PBMs, Antonio, ultimately decide what someone could pay at the counter? I mean, obviously something like this affects a lot of people. A lot of people need insulin.
I mean, the hard part about this is that public policy in the United States has not been aligned in the direction of actually incentivizing drug companies to lower their prices. In traditional marketplaces, when you have 2 different or 3 different companies that are competing to sell the same thing, oftentimes they will lower their prices in order to attract consumers to buy those products. In the drug world, PBMs and drug companies have exemptions to federal anti-kickback laws. That allows drug companies to essentially pay lots of money to PBMs who work under our benefits plans and ultimately determine which drugs will be covered and which ones won't, how much will be charged and how much we won't. So that pay-to-play scheme resulted in prices going up, while PBMs were collecting those rebate dollars. They were not pushing them back to the pharmacy counter, lowering the cost for us as consumers to buy the insulins. That's really where the controversy is centered on.
So what are the next steps in this case? What are some of the possible outcomes that could come from this?
You know, the legal process is very, very complicated. And ultimately, there's going to be a lot of lawyers who get paid a lot of money to ultimately go through the slog and work with judges to see, what actually is legal and what isn't. From a process perspective, it could take years for this to ultimately resolve itself, which is why Congress isn't waiting on these types of cases to rid ourselves of problems. But I want to be clear, just because it will take a long time doesn't mean that the results couldn't be absolutely fundamentally upheave the way that we pay for medicines in the U.S. today. Because drug companies don't compete to lower prices because of these perverse incentives to pay off PBMs and insurance companies in exchange for coverage, we have this problem where prices get increasingly inflated over time. If the Federal Trade Commission is successful in their lawsuit, it could actually pull the rug out from under this entire system. And by ending those kickbacks, it would mean that drug companies would be forced to actually compete to lower their prices rather than compete to inflate them and increase the kickbacks back to the intermediaries.
Antonio, a lot of important and good information there. Thank you again so much for joining us this morning. Again, good information, especially for our viewers impacted by this. So thank you so much.